let's talk about David Boreanaz, who, of course, played Adam, our Buffy Angel actor, Mr. Handsome Face.
Mr. Big Head.
Hey, dude, doesn't he? He has got a fucking melon, don't
He's
he?
got the biggest head, man.
Hey guys, welcome to the Video Express, where we dust off old VHS tapes and discuss all things horror, sci-fi, and exploitation. I'm Matt.
And I'm Katie.
Let's get things moving right along. Katie, tell everybody what we're talking about tonight.
Tonight we are talking about Valentine. Take it away, Matt.
That's right, Valentine, the 2001 slasher film directed by urban legends Jamie Blanks, based on the novel by Tom Savage, with a cast full of hotness.
That is the truth. Yeah, that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair assessment.
Yeah, I would say extremely fair. Before we dig into this, what I like to call made for MTV era slasher, Katie, why don't we tell everybody what's going on in the cinema world today?
All right, so this episode is coming out on April 7th. And so today, April 7th, we are celebrating the birthday of the late, great Stan Winston, who was a special effects legend known for movies like Terminator, Terminator 2, Aliens, Predator, Monster Squad, and like a ton of other things. And, unfortunately, he passed away in 2008, but, he still deserves to be remembered and honored for all of his amazing work in the horror and sci-fi world.
Absolutely. Stan Winston is a god among special effects legends. I mean, he's really top tier, cream of the crop. What I find is really odd, though, is we're celebrating his legacy and his life on his birthday, and you of course hit the nail on the head with Terminator, Terminator 2, Predator, Aliens, Jurassic Park, but Monster Squad, of course, one of our favorite movies. But the one I'm actually shocked that you left off the list, which would be not only
What?
the movie that his crew did the effects for, but the movie that he directed. One of your
Oh,
all-time
I'm
favorite movies,
so
Pumpkinhead.
foolish.
You
I can't.
fool!
Wow. Okay. I'm a fool. Wow, I'm so ashamed. Yeah, that is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I was wow. Yep, cool. Well, good thing you mentioned it because I was testing you actually to see if you remembered that he directed Pumpkinhead.
I know you
So
were.
you
I know.
passed. You passed.
I'm glad. I'm glad. What else we got going on?
um all right, so I have only two things just to have on your radar right about now. Um, the first one is a movie that it's like the last Shutter original that's coming out in like Q1 to use like corporate terms. And it by the time this episode comes out, it would have come out like a week or two before. So it's called Violation. It's coming out on March 25th. So if you have Shutter and you're listening to this episode, it's already out. So you can go check it out if you want. I don't know a whole lot about it other than it supposedly is a super brutal kind of semi-drama, but mostly like a kind of like a rape revenge type movie, which is not my favorite personally, but I know some people really like it. Some people, find a lot of like empowerment through watching those. And so if that's your thing, I've heard a lot of good buzz about it from like the film festival world. So that's on Shudder, called Violation. So definitely check that out. And then this other thing, it's not out yet. It's something that is still currently in development, but I just wanted to get it on everybody's radar because I'm really excited about it. So there is a found footage horror trilogy called Hell House LLC. And I actually haven't seen the third one, but the third one was a Shudder original. And if you've never seen them, basically it's just a found footage about, the first one's about a haunted house where like 15 years ago on Halloween, something went horribly wrong and like 15 people died. And so now these journalists are here like investigating what happened, and some really spooky paranormal stuff happens in the haunted house. So they turned it into a trilogy. And recently, they announced on the Hell House LLC Twitter that they are currently developing a limited series that will likely go on Shutter called the Abaddon Tapes, which is going further into the history of the land that this haunted house was built on and some of the weird culty shit that happened leading up to the events of the first Hell House LLC. So that is my final recommendation of the evening. But if you want to get updates on what's going on with that show, you can follow them on Twitter at Hell House LLC.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, I have yet to check out any of those movies. I always see them popping up in my recommendations and my queues and stuff, but I have yet,
They're fun.
like a lot of new movies, I don't pull that trigger, and I need to.
They're pretty fun. They're not like the most amazing found footage movies I've ever seen, but they're pretty solid and definitely have some creepy moments, particularly in the first one, if I recall correctly. So, yeah, I think they're all on Shutter now.
You know, it's funny that you bring this up because I was just thinking about this today. Not about this movie or series in particular, but I was thinking about found footage today, and you know, every horror has so many different subgenres. You know, zombie, vampire, slasher, and of course, since I would say since 1999's Blair Witch, or was it 99 or 90? I think it was like 99.
I think
But
it was like
anyway,
96, whatever. I don't know.
anyway, whatever. Since Blair Witch, I feel like that was like the stamp of the found footage. And like every subgenre, it'll be a big boom of like 50 million of those types of movies, and then they'll die off. And then like another subgenre comes in and is there for a long time, and they're everywhere. Like, so, you know, like found footage was huge. And then next thing you know, The Walking Dead became a hit, and then it was zombie movies out the yang, and then you know
hmm
we've got slashers and stuff. And I feel like as of right now, I think found footage is starting to make its comeback after being dormant for about 10 years, because you just of course brought this up, the whole found footage thing, and now there's rumblings of a reboot of Paranormal Activity coming out. So it looks like we're
hmm
about to head back down the road of the found footage era once again.
Yeah, I'm kind of all for it. A lot of people don't like found footage, and I think, that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but I love the Paranormal Activity movies. I love the Blair Witch Project. I don't know, something about it, even if they don't necessarily scare me more than like other genres, but they're just a lot of fun for me. And I think there's a lot of unique, interesting things you can do with them if you get creative.
All right, so of course, I wouldn't be me if I wouldn't go off on like some kind of long tangent about something. So I promise, folks, we'll get to Valentine here in just a second. But we're talking about found footage, so it makes me want to talk about that just a little bit. So you know, like you said, yeah, a lot of people are not big fans of found footage films. I teeter totter. Um, I I would say I dislike them more than I like them, but I feel like there's some really good heavy hitters that really like strike the chord for me. So like I
Yeah.
love the original Blair Witch. I love. It's funny. I do like the Paranormal Activity series, but I'm one of those weirdo fans that see. I like the ones that people seem to dislike the most out of that series, and then I dislike the ones that everybody else seems to like, which is very odd. But you know, my two favorites of the Paranormal Activity movies. I can't fucking say that tonight for some reason. Paranormal Activity. My favorite two are what was it? Part three, where it was like kind of like a prequel,
Oh,
where
I
the
love part 3. That's my favorite.
I fucking love that one, and I love the Ghost Dimension one. That
I haven't seen that
actually
one.
So I'm not gonna lie, and I'm totally like I'm totally calling myself out right now, and people are going to make fun of me for this, but Ghost Dimension actually scared the shit out of me. Something, well, all right, I'm terrified of fucking supernatural and ghosts as it is anyway, and so those types of movies always like have me looking over my shoulder at night, and I always run up the, when I go to bed that night, I of course got to go upstairs, so I always do that little like fast trot upstairs. So those movies always make me run. Yeah, those movies always make me run a little bit quicker up the stairs. But I want to say this. I want to say this because I was also just thinking about this movie and how we haven't talked about this yet outside of the show, Katie. And this is the perfect time to bring it up because I'm going to be adding it to our list to watch
Okay.
because this movie is so near and dear to me, and it's actually I'm kicking myself in the ass for putting it on the list because I don't know if I want to watch it again because the only thing that scares me worse than Supernatural and Ghost is aliens. And I'm not talking about like no, like the HR Giger type shit. Like I love that stuff. I'm talking about like the what they call the Greys, like the little 4 foot tall fuckers with the big heads and the big
Yeah.
black eyes. Like they
Yeah.
terrify me. Like I like have an unnatural fear about those little bastards. Um, but there was a made for TV movie back in 1998. And I would have been like 14 or 15 ish. I think it was 14 when that actually aired on television. And I never will forget, I was watching it at my house, and my friend was watching it at his house. And unbeknownst, we didn't know each other was watching it. And it was, it was a fake found footage thing about a family having like dinner together, and then just these aliens land, and they're like doing weird shit with the lights, and they end up breaking into this house, and it's fucking it was the scariest movie of my life on up until like I don't know what trumped that, but that movie
Oh
stuck
my
with me for
gosh.
so long. So yeah, I want to bring that up since we're talking about found footage. And the movie is called Alien Abduction Incident in Lake County. So
Okay, I definitely wanna see that because I also, like, I'm terrified of ghosts, even if I flip-flop on whether I actually believe in them or not, just the idea of them terrifies me, so any movie having to do with supernatural shit scares me, but, like, I love UFO lore and, like, looking up, like, stories about aliens and cryptids, even though it also scares me, so I'm all on board for this, like, alien abduction found footage movie.
yeah, it was Alien Abduction Incident in Lake County, and it was based on something called the McPherson tape, which I think was the name of the family. And it was like the son of the family like bought a new camcorder, so he's like recording like the family get together or whatever, and then like aliens land in their backyard and shit. But it's been a
Ew.
long time since I've watched it, so I'm sure it's gonna be one of those cases where I'm gonna make feel like a fucking idiot for being scared of something like that because it's probably gonna be terrible. But no, we're gonna add that to the list because I just want to see how it's held up since then. But yeah, so
I'm
yeah, thank
game.
you for bringing up the found footage shit and allowing me to go on one of my fucking long ass tangents. Okay, so with that being said, Katie, what did you think of the 2001 slasher flick Valentine?
Okay, so I think I mentioned this in our last episode. I have a big soft spot for late 90s and 2000s horror because that is the era that is when I became of age. I was a young middle school kid around the time this movie came out. And what's funny is that I realized when I was watching it for this episode that I don't think it's been years since I've actually like sat down and watched this movie from beginning to end. And so this wasn't a movie that I like spent a lot of time watching as a kid or as a teen, but I'm still weirdly super nostalgic for it because even if I didn't see the movie when it came out, what I remember the most is that the trailer was on TV all the time and that the trailers were playing before like other movies that I would go see in the theaters. And the scene with the maggots in the chocolate was just like forever burned into my brain, and I always thought that was like creepy and weird and gross. And so I've always like had this weird fascination with this movie, even if I didn't really see it until I was later in high school, college, and more recently a few days ago. So all that long-winded explanation aside, I do really like this movie. I think it has some weird clunky bits that I have more context to now that I've looked up some of the production stuff, so we'll kind of get into that later. But I mean, all in all, I think this is a really fun slasher. It's got a great cast. I love the way the killer looks. I love the Cupid mask with the overcoat and the bloody nose. Like, it seems so just like instantly classic and iconic to me. Um, and then the only other thing I kind of wanted to just go over really quick is that this movie, in a very hilarious way, in retrospect, checks off several late 90s and early 2000s like mainstream horror tropes that I couldn't help but notice. So I thought I'd list a few of them for you today, and they are as follows. Okay, so we have obligatory cast member from a hit teen TV show, and in this case, we have two. We have David Boreanaz from Buffy/Angel, and briefly we have Katherine Heigl, who at the time was in a TV show called Roswell that I believe was pretty popular at the time. Um, then we have the obligatory new metal soundtrack featuring artists such as Deftones, Orgy, Static X, and briefly Rob Zombie, even though Rob Zombie's not new metal, but I feel like it's appropriate for a Rob Zombie song to also be in a late 90s, early 2000s horror movie.
Isn't Disturbed on
Basically,
there
it's a
too?
copy paste. Yeah, Disturbed, Linkin Park. It's basically a
Yeah,
copy paste of the Queen of the
Attic
Damned
Act.
soundtrack. Yeah,
Yeah,
Static
yeah.
X.
Like, every single one of those artists was on every fucking horror soundtrack from like
Yeah,
1997 to like 2004. Like, you knew for
and
a goddamn fact Rob Zombie, Static X, and Disturbed were gonna be on that fucking soundtrack. And it was always
yes.
going to be either a fucking remix of Living Dead Girl or Dragula. And it was always gonna be like
Every
a
time.
fucking like, yeah, a techno remix of one of those two goddamn songs. Always.
I think
Always.
the funniest thing about that to me is that they always, and including in this movie, they always play these like new metal songs at like a dance club or like a party, as if all these like basic normie, like just like hot Hollywood people are gonna be like hanging out jamming to Orgy and Deftones. So that was really funny to me. And then there's two other quick little things that this checks off, which is we've got the obligatory white tank top and jeans. Thank God. God bless Denise Richards, and God bless whoever put her in the white tank top and jeans, because that to me is a staple of horror from this era. Because I'm immediately
So hot.
reminded of Eliza Dushku from Wrong Turn, and Jessica Biel from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. It's like the copy paste same hot brunette in the white tank top and jeans.
Yes. It's honestly one of my
Um,
favorite tropes of that era.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then the final thing that I noticed that really made me chuckle is that we have the obligatory research scene using an early internet search engine. So there's a scene where Marley Shelton is doing some research, which it's a just general movie trope in general, like also including just horror and other genres of having somebody like go to the library to look through like the microfilm and like look up old newspapers and stuff. But in this era, we're in like the millennial era, so they would always try to like fit in something like new agey with like the internet or a computer. So they have her this like they show her using this big giant clunky desktop on some like archaic looking like free webs kind of like search engine that you've never heard of, and it made me laugh a lot. So
These
those are
motherfuckers
those are all of
these
the
motherfuckers are asking Jeeves. These motherfuckers are asking
yes.
Jeeves who the killer
Yes. It was like pre Ask Jeeves even. So that was just
is.
made me laugh a lot. I'm sure there were more, but those were kind of the main ones that jumped out to me.
That's hilarious. And look at you, like, doing your own little like new age millennial Joe Bob drive-in totals, basically.
Yeah, I was like, should I do like hot tub foo and drill foo? Like
You know what? I'm going to make this a staple for every episode from now on. Oh, not every episode, but every time we do a movie that's based around the era that you love, I'm going to have you do these the Katie drive-in
fantastic.
totals. Because
I'm all for it.
and if any of our listeners are wondering what the hell we're talking about, who's not heard any of our previous episodes, so our show is of course called Video Express because we usually talk about movies from the video era. So the show is usually going to be like 95% of all the shit that I grew up with, and I'm kind of introducing Katie to these things. But I couldn't do a show with her as my colleague and just like not do some shit that she loves. So I made it a point to when I did made the list to do stuff from the era that she likes. So late 90s, early 2000s style shit. So this is our first Katie centric episode. So there'll be more to come, and there'll be a lot of surprises in store. But yeah, finish
Yes.
telling me what you thought about Valentine.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to say as far as like the video era and whatnot, like this was very much I was growing up in like the tail end of that era. So I did get some like VHS. I have some nostalgia for VHS, but most of my time like going to the movie like the video store, I was seeing movies like Valentine and like Urban Legend and whatnot like on the shelf in like DVD form. So it's a slightly similar it's like a similar experience, but it's not quite the same. But I still am very nostalgic for that time.
Now you know what's funny about that is I didn't buy my first DVD until 2002, and I'll actually never forget what my first DVD was. It was Jason X, and the reason
Yes.
I'll never forget that is because I drove the day that it came out on video. I drove from nobody's gonna know this unless they're from around here or know us, but I drove from Luray to Harrisonburg and from Harrisonburg to Winchester all in the same day, stopping everywhere to get Jason X on VHS, and nobody fucking had it on VHS. The only place I had it on VHS was Blockbuster, and they weren't fucking selling it, of course. They were just renting it out. So it was only on DVD. So the same day that I purchased Jason X on DVD is the same day that I bought a DVD player. And it all went
Amazing.
downhill from there. But what's funny is I don't own Valentine. I rented it for this episode, but I do own its brethren, Urban Legend, Urban Legend's Final Cut, the Scream 1 and 2. Um, what's I Know What You Did Last Summer. I own all those
Yes.
on VHS, so these movies still qualify as Video Express.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Yeah, because there was that really long overlap period where they were still doing both. It's kind of like how now things will come out on DVD and Blu-ray at the same time.
Right.
So all in all, when it comes to Valentine, despite its issues, I feel like it's aged pretty well, and I feel like I like it a lot more now than I would have if I'd watched it then. Because if I I've read some of the reviews for this, and it got a lot of hate, not a lot of hate, but like people were just kind of like it had a lot of lackluster reviews when it came out because people thought it they either thought it was too formulaic and not doing like the meta scream kind of trendy everyone knows what's going on kind of thing, but they also like got mad at it for seemingly copying Scream in a lot of ways, so it kind of just felt like it wasn't designed to win either way. But all in all, I'm a fan of this movie, and I think it's definitely got some endearing parts and reasons to go back and revisit it.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it because you know what? I am not a huge fan.
Yeah, I
All right,
thought
so
I suspected these would be the episodes where we would finally differ.
all right. Look, I'm kind of mostly joking. Like I don't hate this movie. I don't despise this movie. Um, and I think I've said this in so many episodes thus far. It's totally a serviceable movie, and I think it's actually well done movie. Honestly, I think it's
Yeah.
there's no I've got no qualms with anything production wise. Uh, it's just so when you got to figure like this came out a year before I graduated high school, and I was the skater punk asshole kid who had all of like the 80s and 70s horror movies on VHS. And whenever these movies were coming out, I was like, "No, these movies suck, man. They're not as cool as the 80s." So, so I was always kind of looking down my nose at these movies. But as I got older, I learned to actually appreciate them more. And out of all of the well, again, what I call the MTV era slasher flicks, out of all of them, out of the Scream franchise, the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise, all this stuff. Actually, one of my favorites out of this entire ilk is the Urban Legends films. Both of them, the
Mhm.
first one and the second one. And again, the director of the first one did this movie. And it's funny that you say that people kind of compared this to it being like Scream, or some people hate it for not being like Scream. And the whole time I was watching it, I was like, this movie is almost like a cut and paste job of the Urban Legends movies. And I mean, I think a lot of that probably falls back on Jamie Banks being, or Blanks, I'm sorry, being the
Yeah.
director of Urban Legend. But it didn't feel like Scream, but it sure as fuck felt like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legends for sure.
Yeah, I got that vibe too. I think yeah, that you pretty much nailed it. I I feel like this one, even if it does feel a little, even if it is a little formulaic, I personally find that weirdly refreshing, because after Scream happened, and it's gotten even worse in like the past like 5 to 10 years, but there's just like this way, maybe we've talked about this before, but there's like this wave of like self-aware pseudo horror comedies, and they're all trying to do the Scream thing where it's like, let's make fun of horror tropes and have a bunch of characters who are horror fans, and they make all these references and like nods to like
Yeah,
other franchises. And I love Scream is probably my favorite horror movie. I love horror comedies. I love Cabin in the Woods. Like I don't mind that like referential like meta kind of vibe, but considering that in this time it seemed like a lot of horror movies were trying to capitalize on what Scream did, because Scream kind of changed the game when it came out, and everybody was trying to like do the same thing. And so I really appreciate that this movie didn't really do that at all and just went back to kind of a classic who done it slasher with some just really hot cool like ladies in the cast, and the whole time there's like red herring after red herring, and then the red herring contradicts the other red herring. It's just it's kind of a mess, but I just appreciate that we didn't have a bunch of like random jokes about like John Carpenter or Wes Craven like thrown in there.
this is going to be a really interesting episode and a fun episode because I like this is going to be the first one where you and I are actually going to completely probably have different opinions about everything. Um, so I'm going to kick off real quick. I'm going to say this first, and I'm going to get into a disagreement, and it's going to be our first disagreement. So mark this one down. But
Ooh.
first and foremost, I'm going to say this. I I do love Scream. I love the first Scream movie so fucking much. It's a great. It is in the ranks with the greats. It cemented itself beside your Friday the 13th, your Nightmare on Elm Street, your Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like Ghostface is now a horror icon. No doubt about it. I pretty much hate the fucking sequels with a passion. I like four a little bit, but two and three I think are fucking atrocious. But as much as I love the first Scream movie, I have said this so many times, and I've gone on drunk rants about Scream, and people usually fucking hate me for this. And tonight I'm actually sober for once, and I'm still going to go on this rant. Um, Scream is a again, it's an icon of horror movie cinema. but also during that time, the way I've always compared Scream is I've compared it to Nirvana. Okay, so here's what I mean by that. In the '80s, you have your Jasons, your Freddys, your Michael Myers, your '80s era of slashers and your gorehound films and stuff like that. And then music wise, you had your '80s hair metal and like your other like your Metallica metal and stuff like that. And then along came Nirvana and turned it into the grunge scene. And Scream came along and kicked all the other horror to the side and created the new trendy meta horror and created its own fucking genre. And I always compare Scream to Nirvana because they both fucking killed that that genre for like a good almost decade. And a lot of people like hate me for saying that, but I mean it's the God's honest truth. When Scream came out, no fucking slasher or horror film was the same after that until
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird, but until Rob Zombie and Eli Roth.
Yeah.
Because Scream, of course, like I said, ushered in your urban legend, it ushered in Valentine, it ushered in I Know She Did Last Summer, and every film after that was exactly what you said in your tropes. It grabbed some fucking, you know, bleached blonde fucking dopey kid from whatever show was hot for the second on TV, threw them into the mix. You got either Kevin Williamson or a Kevin Williamson wannabe writing the fucking script, trying to make it trendy, and then we're going to grab whatever R&B hot artist is on the charts right now, and we're going to fucking shoehorn them into the movie. A la LL Cool J or Busta Rhymes or Tyra Banks or whoever the fuck we can get,
Yep.
and like that was the fucking trend, man. And again, like I was anywhere between like 16 to 20 or whatever when these movies were coming out, and I hated them at the time, man. I hated it because I was that fucking guy that liked the hair metal music. It was like, man, fuck Nirvana. I was the guy like, man, fuck Scream, because it ruined what I loved. um I actually respect and enjoy those movies more now that I've gotten older and everything's kind of a wash. But I uh I I don't know, man. Like Rob Zombie came onto the scene, film wise, not music wise, and kind of reintroduced that gritty, grimy, more of a gorehound type of film, because during the era we got House of Thousand Corpses came in, and then we started getting like the torture porn movies like Hostel and stuff like that, and that kind of finally put the bullet in the head of the MTV genre or era, I should say. But yeah, sorry, I had to go off on my fucking chant. Now I'm going to go into my disagreement with the red herring thing. And folks, you should know about our show by now that we're completely 100% off the get go spoilers. So if you don't want to know, you should not be listening because we're going right into this.
Yeah.
I,
You've had
I
20
yeah
years to watch this movie, so
yeah exactly 20 years. This February was 20. Um,
yeah.
which is actually why which is why we're doing the show. Actually, people don't. We're actually doing this 4 days after Valentine's Day, but it's not coming out till April. Fuck us with our scheduling.
Whoops.
But whoopsie. So yeah. Anyway, my disagreement with you, and I'm not going to be. We're not going to be arguing over this. Like I think I genuinely going to say this to you, and I just want to see your take on it. But you said, red herring after red herring after red herring, and actually, I wrote down in my notes, terrible red herrings, because I kind of felt the opposite. Because in order, and this is going to be me being a fucking geek, but in order to successfully see, I said that line and immediately, I one thing that always gets me about Scream is I hated that fucking franchise except for the first one, but everybody always called me Randy because I am fucking Randy. But anyway,
Look, I didn't
um,
say they were good red herrings, but they are red.
okay,
An
right,
attempt
all
was
right, so
made.
yeah, in order to do a successful red herring in a movie, you introduce somebody that could possibly be the killer, and you at least have them last until like the last little bit of the movie. But this fucking movie would introduce somebody that could possibly be the killer and killed them 5 minutes later. And then they would introduce
Yeah.
somebody else. And then they would kill them 5 minutes later. And then the next thing you know, it comes down to only two possibilities. And when it comes down to those two possibilities, we've only got like 20 minutes of this movie left. And then that other person dies. But we'll get to that in a minute, but that's so far my only like argument with you is I feel like there wasn't a lot of red herrings, and the ones that they did have, they were just pissed away so quickly.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Honestly, they're not the best red herrings, and I keep saying we'll get into it. I'm trying to save it for when we actually go into like the behind the scenes stuff here, but there
Right.
there were they basically planned to do one thing, and then at the last minute we're like, just kidding, we'll do this instead, and it kind of changed. It just kind of like had this domino effect of like kind of fucking up all of the red herrings that they had previously attempted to set up.
Right.
So yeah, I'll definitely give you that. I more was just bringing that up to just say that it they're doing this kind of like they're attempting to do this kind of like classic slasher who done it, where nobody, quote unquote, nobody knows who the killer is, and they keep trying to like confuse us and make us suspect it's somebody. And so that to me is just a little bit more refreshing than a bunch of people rehashing the same Scream dialogue where they break down like horror movie tropes and they make a bunch of references to like movies from the 80s.
Right.
So I that and I think that's something that you kind of see with the other movie that Jamie Blanks is mainly known for, which is Urban Legend. If I recall correctly, that doesn't have a ton of like horror movie references. It's more just referencing these like urban legends that we
Right.
all grew up hearing, and that to me is really effective. So I do appreciate the attempt here to not just do a copy paste of Scream.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Something else I want to piggyback off of and agree with you on is the killer, the look of the killer. Um, that's the one thing that's always stood out to me about this movie is I absolutely positively love the look of that killer. I love that mask. I love the outfit. I love uh, the choice of weaponry with the kills, which they weren't the most
Hmm.
inventive kills, but they were done well. And had it not been 2001, I think we would have got a little bit more detail with the blood and effects and stuff. But of course, that
Yeah.
era, a lot of stuff was tried to be made as friendly as possible to get more bang for the buck out of the audience. But I also want to. I know we'll talk about the cast here in just a second, but since we're talking about the killer, I just want to get this out of the way real quick. My hat's off to Marshall Virtue, who was the actor slash stuntman who was actually the one who wore the mask and the outfit as the killer. I mean, he wasn't the killer, but he's the stuntman. That actually played the
Right.
killer. Um, I love the way that motherfucker moved in this movie, and it was funny. It was so reminiscent of Michael Myers and the original
Yeah.
John Carpenter Halloween movie, which is even funnier because he was the one of the stunt guys in the worst Halloween movie, which was Halloween Resurrection, which means he did play Michael Myers at one point. But I really loved his
That's
movement.
awesome.
I loved his stature, and I know he's still a stuntman to this day, but I really wish we could have gotten more martial virtue as a horror actor, or at least a masked killer stunt person because he's got great body movement.
Yeah, that's and I'm gonna again once again spoiler alert because I gotta get into some spoilers to talk about this next part. But what I really like, I really like this look of the killer. Like we've said before, like he's so iconic, and I think it unfortunately their like reveal at the end it just kind of weakens that character to me because
Hmm.
this whole time
Yes.
you think that it's this guy who was a nerd in middle school and all of these girls rejected him at the school dance and yada yada yada. He gets humiliated in front of the whole school, and years later he's never gotten over it, and now he's stalking them seeking revenge. And to me, that's like a pretty solid premise. Like I don't think this needed to be a murder mystery. Like I felt like the story was a lot stronger when like in the first like half of the movie where you think that it's this one guy. And I guess like they're trying to figure out who this guy could be, and they kind of like drop in like, oh, maybe he got plastic surgery and he looks different now. But like when I heard that, I just thought that was so silly. There was no way like that it was going to just be this surprise. And then they try to do this thing where they're like, actually, Dorothy, one of the girls, is the killer. And then in the very last 5 seconds of the movie, they flip it and say, just kidding, actually, David Boreanaz, who is supposedly the hero of the movie, in like literally the last 5 seconds of the movie, they try to reveal that he is actually this nerdy kid who got plastic surgery and buffed up and now is doing it. So that to me is just so clunky and messy, and I think it cheapens the like strength that this villain had leading up to it, because like you said, he very much was like a Michael Myers. Like it was like this unknown person. We don't know what he looks like now. We know what he looked like as a kid, but we don't know what he looks like now. He's in a mask and he's escaped presumably from like some sort of psychiatric hospital for like the criminally insane. And yeah, I just feel like they really cheapened what they set up there.
Oh, absolutely. Uh, so, all right, two things. One, we'll definitely have to circle back around to this very moment, and because I want to talk so much about the ending, but I don't want it to like
Yes.
get in the way of the meat and bones to the rest of the show. But yeah, I think we're gonna circle back around to the ending because there's so much I've got to say about it, and I wrote down like really like scribbled down um, what would Matt Cloude have done if he had made this movie? What would I have done with
Oh.
that ending? And I've got two endings that I'm going to give to you at the end of the show that I think would have fucking probably. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or even have like ego, but I just feel like these two choices could have really gravitated this ending. But
Yeah.
anyway, I want to move back to what you just said about the movie as a whole. Like you said, dorky kid gets turned down by all these cute girls and middle school, and he evidently grows up to be a killer, but nobody knows who he is because supposedly maybe he's hot now, maybe he's not. Nobody knows what he looks like, and the whole time I'm watching Valentine, I was reminded of one of my favorite '80s slashers movies, which is Terror Train, which of course had Jamie Lee Curtis, which is basically 100% the exact same storyline. So for it wasn't middle school; it was college, and they picked out this fucking nerdy ass teen, and they do a prank on him that fucks him up in the head, and then flash forward a couple years later, they're doing a New Year's Eve graduation party on a train. He sneaks in on the train. Nobody knows he's on there, and he's wearing different disguises, and he's killing them off one by one. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is Valentine is basically a '90s revamp of Terror Train, just not on a fucking train.
Yeah, it's definitely it feels, even though it hits, like we've mentioned a couple times, it hits all these like very obvious like late 90s early 2000s tropes, it still feels like it's such a like copy paste of something straight out of the 80s to me. Like it's just this like it just feels so classic in even how they shoot some of the chase scenes. Like I'm specifically thinking about when Kate, our main character here, our final girl, I guess, when she first sees the guy, like he's like walking down the hall. Maybe it's not her actually. Maybe it's Katherine Heigl. There's a shot where the killer is like slowly walking down this long hallway, like holding the knife, and
Yes,
he's in the
yeah.
mask and the black overcoat. And it's like I feel like I could almost see the film grain. It wasn't there, but like the vibe was there. Like I could almost see that this was like some classic like slasher villain. So yeah, I
And
definitely get that vibe.
yeah, it was such a Michael Myers shot. Like that's one of the moments where, like I said, Marshall Virtue, who's of course in the killer's garb, has got that stature and that walk to him when he's coming down that
Yeah.
hallway after Catherine Heigl. It's like, damn, like that's a pretty good Michael Myers walk you got going there, bud. All right, look, let's jump into our cast because we're I can see we're gonna talk about this movie like forever if we let ourselves. So
Yeah,
let's
don't
dive
let
into
me.
this cast. Yeah. I'm like, look, folks, this might be the hottest fucking cast of any movie, of any horror movie
Absolutely.
or this movie in general, because Jesus fucking Christ, listen to this lineup: Denise Richards, David Boreanaz, Marley Shelton, Jessica Capshaw, Jessica Caulfield, Katherine Heigl, and Daniel Cosgrove, who was on 90210. Like, there is
Yeah.
not a single, like, even like halfway good looking person in this movie. Well, maybe the detective, but like, I mean, he's not like ugly, but
Mm.
like this is like the most attractive fucking cast I have ever seen. And immediately, one of the first things I wrote down is this is one of the most unrelatable movies I have ever seen because
Everyone's so hot.
everyone is fucking hot. And I noticed something off the bat that I actually didn't like about I should say another thing I didn't like about this era of horror films. And this isn't a gripe across the board. This is a personal gripe. It's because like the horror movies that I grew up with and the slasher movies that I love, they're relatable in a way that the kids in the movie, or whatever you want to call them, the kids or whatever, there's always at least one relatable person in the bunch. There's
Mhm.
always somebody who's not the attractive one, or there's somebody that's a little bit chunkier, or somebody. Even the girls are relatable. Like you got your virginal, like final girl. There's like usually like a slut. There's just different your tropes of all the different characters. And this movie, they were just fucking just all hot
Yeah.
across the board. And another thing was like none of them lived in like a realistic house. Like everybody's house is like huge and sprawling. Like this is like
Yeah.
California Hills house, all right? This is like Heidi from the Hills is probably like their next door neighbor. And the only person that's going to relate to these characters are, you know, I think those types of people, like your California, LA type people, and it's harder for me to relate to these types of characters. Again, because I was raised like I can relate to Linda, Laurie, and Annie from Halloween because I know those people. You know what I'm saying? Like I can relate to Alice and stuff from Friday the 13th because I know those types of people. And these are fucking supermodels looking all kinds of fucking hot. Like these bitches wake up out of bed ready for a photo shoot. But I, I'm starting to veer off into another alleyway here. So let's stay on track. Uh, let's kick let's just kickstart it with Denise, goddamn what a fucking babe Richards, who played
Okay.
Paige, and of course we all know Denise Richards from Wild Things, Starship Troopers, and of course Tammy and the T Rex. Uh, so
Of course.
So go ahead, Katie. Give us our rundown of Paige that was played by Denise Richards.
Okay, I am such a huge Denise Richards, like 90s, 2000s Denise Richards fan. She's so well, she's gorgeous. Like obviously, she's super hot. So like I like her because of that, but also she just has this like attitude in all of her characters except for, like
Oh
Tammy and the
yeah,
T-Rex, which we heard Joe Bob talk about. That was kind of a different role for her. But I love this character of Paige. Like she is so confident and sexy and she speaks her mind and she's sassy. Every scene that she was in, she was the most interesting person in the room. Like she was the most interesting character to watch. And even if I can't relate to an LA supermodel lifestyle of waking up in your giant ass house and looking like Denise Richards, I still felt like I just really liked her. Like I was genuinely like annoyed when they killed her off, honestly, because she's just fun to watch. And I think it's possible at the time. I'm not really sure what the mindset was of the filmmakers with this movie, but it's kind of a trope that the quote unquote like slutty one always has to die. Like you get punished for being promiscuous or for being like sexually confident. But I didn't get they did kill her off in this movie, but I didn't get the vibe that it was like the trope of like oh, you like sex, so you're gonna die. So for that, I did like that. A little interesting tidbit: this character was almost Jennifer Love Hewitt, who at the time was
Oh,
known for I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I think I don't think she would have carried it as well as Denise Richards. Like Denise
no,
Richards just has
not at
like
all.
she's got these eyebrows, like she does this look where it's just like, oh, she's gonna kill me probably. um, and she pours hot wax on that dude's dick, and I just thought that was awesome. Like she has the best scenes to me. She has the best death scene in my opinion. Also, like I just feel like she is the driving force of this movie for me.
Yeah. So again, like all the girls just kind of felt like across the board, just hot chicks to me. Like I didn't like you said, like none of them actually felt like one was like the slutty hot bitch and one was like the virginal chick. Like they all just kind of felt
Hmm.
like equal in a way. I would say out of all of them, she was definitely the one that stuck out the most. Um, the girl is just fucking gorgeous, and yes, her eyebrows, whoo doggy, great eyebrows. But yeah, she's just like a straight up bitch in this entire movie. But she's not like, like sometimes in movies when somebody's playing the bitch, like it gets annoying after a while. But she plays it with such finesse that that like I don't know if she's even doing that much acting, to be honest. Like
Oh yeah.
she I think she's playing the part because it is her. Because here's the thing, you said that look that she gives. I know that look. And you know what that look is? That is the look that a woman will give a man who even thinks that he has a chance of approaching her. That is a look a
Oh
woman
yeah.
gives that says, "Don't even fucking try it, bud, because you don't have a chance." And she's got that look through the entire fucking movie. And like I said, I don't think it's acting. I think, you've heard of resting bitch face. I think this is just resting Denise Richards' face.
Yeah. And the thing about her being kind of the bitchy character, it's like the reason it's not annoying is because she's not a bully. She's not like raging at everybody and like just being mean.
Right.
She's just confident and sassy, and she does kind of have this air about her of like, "Oh, I bet you think I'm really hot. Well, good luck, buddy. Like you don't have a chance." And unfortunately, there are, several characters who seem to take that as an invitation to be creepy and weird at her. But she handles it total. She keeps it totally cool and calm. Like when that detective tries to hit on her, she's just like, "Please remove your hand from my thigh," and then just gets up and leaves. Like she could have freaked out, she could have raged on him, but she just keeps it so cool and laid back. So definitely, the most fun person to watch in this movie.
Bad bitch 101. All right, so let's let's hop over who to our lead actress, our final girl of the movie, which is Kate, played by Marley Shelton. She is so fucking adorable. I love Marley Shelton. I wish there was more genre movies for me to see. I mean, of course, we've got Sin City, Planet Terror, and the aforementioned Scream 4. But like, she's just like I love her. She is so cute and just like I just like want to like just hold her and just tell her everything's okay. But what did you think of Kate as our final girl for Valentine?
So I also really like Marley Shelton just as an actor. I think she's really great. I love her as Dr. Block in the Grindhouse movies. That's a great character.
Yes.
But I feel like this character of Kate is a little milk toast to me. Like it's a little bland.
Yeah.
She's not the best final girl, honestly. Like there's just not a lot to her. And unfortunately, it feels like everything having to do with her character kind of revolves around this semi dramatic relationship that she has with David Boreanaz, because like he's an alcoholic and he's trying to get better, and they've been on a break, but now they're like starting to hang out again and maybe like get back together, and it feels like that kind of takes up a whole lot of like who she is, and so I don't feel like I really get to like I feel like the most endearing scene with her, the scene that gives me the most character development is the toilet water scene, which is where she is in the shower and she's washing her hair and her hair is full of soap, and then presumably the killer cuts off her water. Something happens and she loses water mid shower and she's got to be at work in 20 minutes and her landlord isn't answering the phone. So what does she do? She sticks her head in the toilet to rinse her hair out, and that is just so disgusting and hilarious to me. So that did make her character a little bit more endearing, but she just doesn't really like do much. Like she doesn't even get the last, like, usually the final girl, they're the final girl because they take down the killer. They're the ones that ultimately they outsmart the villain. But she doesn't outsmart anybody. She gets outsmarted.
No,
Like at the end, her boyfriend, who she doesn't think is the killer, kills who she thinks is the killer, and then in the last second, only the audience is told that he is actually Jeremy Melton, the nerd from the middle school dance. So at the end, she's still just left in the dark. So there's no like arc to her. She doesn't change. She doesn't learn anything. She doesn't come out of this experience like changed in the way a lot of final girls do. So I was a little disappointed in her, honestly.
yeah, and it's no, not her fault, but it's just there's
Oh
absolutely
yeah, she's great.
nothing to this character whatsoever. And that's what I was trying to say a while ago. It's just hotness across the board. And like I said, the only one that really sticks out is Denise Richards because she's Denise Richards and she's got like these really great moments. But everyone else, it's just like you could swap those characters around and it would not make a lick of fucking difference because they're all like
Hmm.
they were cookie cutter characters with no development, no build up, no anything. And it's another thing that I didn't like about the movie. I love her. I could watch her eat a bowl of Cheerios for 2 hours and I'd be fucking fine. But it's just I just wish she had a lot more because you're right. She's our final girl, but she's not our final girl. There is literally nothing about her that, I mean, hell, I don't even like really like worry about her wellness throughout the movie because like
No.
there was even not even really many moments of like that much danger. So it's just like fucking boring, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the reason that it doesn't feel like she's in as much danger as maybe the other characters is they do establish at the very beginning that she's likely our main character, and you can kind of assume that she'll probably be the last one standing out of everybody, especially because sometimes there's this weird thing where like the main character is actually the most boring. So the fact that she was one of the most
Yeah.
boring characters, I was like, okay, yeah, she's sticking around. But also, I realized, when I didn't realize this when I was watching the movie, but when I was looking up stuff about it, all of the girls are killed in ways that are similar to how they rejected Jeremy Melton at the school dance. So like Paige, Denise Richards, says, I'd rather be boiled alive, and then she gets locked in the hot
Right.
tub and electrocuted.
Right.
And one of the other characters, Lily, like says ew when he asks her, and she's the one that gets the maggot chocolates and gets like thrown in the dumpster. But the character of Kate was the only character who was nice to him in her rejection. She said, maybe later, Jeremy. And so I feel like even before we know who the killer is, it already kind of was in the back of my head of like, she wasn't even like mean to him. So I don't know why he would want to kill her. He probably is just
Right.
obsessed with her. So I just didn't feel like she was really in any danger.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we totally agree on that. Let's talk about David Boreanaz, who of course played Adam, our Buffy Angel actor, Mister Handsome Face. Uh, how'd you feel
Mr.
about
Big
him?
Head.
Hey, dude, doesn't he? He has got a fucking melon, don't
He's
he?
got the biggest head, man. Yeah, he's a big beefy dude. You know, I he's fine. He's kind of boring also. Like he's kind of boring and she's kind of boring, and they just together are this really boring couple. Like even like, I just don't believe that he's an alcoholic. Like, they try to set it up like he's this, like, reckless alcoholic and that he's out of control when he's drunk, and that's why they're, like, taking a step back, but they never show us. They give us, like, a little glimpse
No,
of him being drunk later, and he's just kind of an asshole, but he's not even belligerent. So, like, I just can't believe that, like, he's this, like, crazy, shitty boyfriend. So, just there's that. Um, and then yeah, he doesn't really have a lot of interesting things to do. And then when they try to do, again, they don't succeed, but they try to do this kind of red herring thing at the end where Kate, Marley Shelton, she does eventually start to suspect that maybe he is Jeremy Melton, who grew up and got like plastic surgery and just worked out a bunch. And so she's kind of afraid of him. And he disappears from this party for a while because she got mad at him for being drunk again. And then when he shows back up, he's got a completely different persona. Like he is so creepy and so like obviously like sketchy, and it's just so
right.
obvious that he is the killer, and it just doesn't make any sense because it just doesn't fit with anything else that we've seen of him in this whole movie. So it just comes kind of out of left field, and the reveal that he is actually the killer is just I don't know. So he only had 10 days to actually film his part for this movie because he was in the middle of Buffy and Angel at the time. So they were trying to like shoot around all of these red herrings that they had set up and didn't fully explore. And so I just feel like similar to Kate, he just didn't really have a lot to do. He just kind of shows up and they have really boring dialogue about whatever's going on in their relationship, and then he goes away, and it doesn't really like change. He doesn't really affect anything around him at all, it seems.
No. And like, yeah, again, boring as shit. And I feel like he's the yin to Marley Shelton's yang. Whereas I think I love her to death, and I feel like, she's great, but her character's not. I feel like it's almost a little bit opposite on him. All right, let me just get it out of the way here. I have never liked David Boreanaz. I have always thought he was a terrible actor, and he is
He's not
just the
great.
same fucking. No, he's always the same fucking person in everything that he's in.
Yeah.
Um, I think the only time I ever even remotely liked him was like maybe like the first season that he appeared in Buffy when he was like
Mhm.
younger. He had that cool vibe, but then like after that, like no, it was the same fucking shit over and over again. So I've never liked him really that much. Yeah, I mean he's fucking charming and good looking, but fucking got the personality of a wet rag. But
Mhm.
yeah, he's boring. The love story is boring. Everything about it is boring. And you keep saying that and we're again we'll talk about it in depth towards the end. But you keep saying, of course, it's revealed that he's the killer. And I wrote down in my notes again in all capital letters. So who the fuck was the killer with a bunch of question marks? Because, like, was he and again, don't answer that now, we'll get to it, but was he really the
Okay.
killer? And, like, I don't know, dude. I hate it. I hated everything about him in this movie. I'm just not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm not even gonna try to pretend like, no, fuck this character of Adam because even like the whole like quote unquote red herring of him possibly being Jeremy Melton or whatever that fucking kid's name was, who was this ugly dorky kid from middle school who maybe he grew up and worked out and got plastic surgery. Come the fuck on. Like, no,
Yeah, that's not
that
how
doesn't
plastic
work.
surgery and exercise works. You don't literally turn
No.
into a completely different person. Like his entire bone structure changed, which I don't think that's how that works. So yeah,
Well,
I'm with you on
look.
that. It's really weak.
Are you trying to tell me that the logic from Face Off, starring John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, does not is not how it actually works?
No,
Did you ever stop and think?
unfortunately, no.
Did you maybe not stop and think that maybe Jeremy Melton met a guy that looked like David Boreanaz, and they literally just took his face off?
You know, I'm willing to let that slide. Yeah, I'm willing to believe that because I feel like by late 90s 2000s movie logic, then that is a thing that is possible and could happen.
I kid, but no, I fucking I hated him in this movie. I don't care for him that much in anything else, to be honest. And it was just all just a big turd, a wet, hot, steaming turd of a part.
Mhm.
Um,
He's really out of
but
place,
however,
like, he
it's so out of
sorry, but I just yeah, he's out of place, like, it's so obvious that he's the person that they cast. He's like the as far as I know, I'm pretty sure he was the most famous person in this cast at that time. Now, Denise Richards was pretty popular in her own right, and, like, Katherine Heigl went on to be even more famous than all of them, really, but at the time, Angel and Buffy were, like, the hottest things on TV for young people at the time, and so they obviously just cast him to kind of capitalize on that, but he just doesn't have the right look. Like, I don't know, he just doesn't fit in this movie. He just seems like
He doesn't have a
uncomfortable in
presence.
every scene. I don't believe he and Marley Shelton have absolutely zero chemistry. Like, they might as well
No.
be like related. Like, they just have no chemistry at all.
You know what's sad about that is you're absolutely right. There is zero chemistry there. Marley Shelton and Josh Brolin had more chemistry together in fucking Planet Terror than these two did,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's crazy to say because Planet Terror is like a goofy grindhouse, goopy, cheesy movie where Josh Brolin is like popping like zombie boils off his face and shit, and like and he trying to kill her, and there's better chemistry. But yeah,
Yeah.
like he just has zero presence in this movie. It's fucking super
Marley
boring,
Shelton had
and
better chemistry with Rose McGowan in Planet Terror than she does with David Boreanaz in this movie.
oh god. All right, so like we're gonna keep shitting on David Boreanaz throughout the rest of the show, but let's hop along, Cassidy, over to let's talk about somebody who I actually did like a good bit, and that's the Jessica Capshaw is Dorothy, who is spoilers also maybe the killer. What did you think
Yeah.
of Dorothy or our actress Jessica Capshaw?
So, as far as acting goes, she's great. I haven't she looks familiar, but I didn't really recognize a lot of the other stuff that was on her IMDb, so I don't really know her from anything else. But in this movie, I think she does a good job. But as a character, I wrote down multiple times like Dorothy fucking sucks. Like, she just sucks. Like, she is so annoying. It's like, okay, so to give some background, she's got this like ugly friend syndrome where, like, now she's pretty much as hot as everybody else in this cast. Like, she is just like a hot blonde lady, on par with everybody else that's in her friend group. But they introduced that in middle school she was quote unquote the chubby one, and she was left on the sidelines while everybody else got to dance with people at the Valentine's Day dance. So she's got this complex of like resenting all of her hot friends, because she was quote unquote the ugly one. And that is totally, that's totally normal. That happens to people. But what really bugs me about her is that, like, she's, one, super hot now, and two, she's rich as fuck. She lives in a huge
Yeah,
ass mansion, and she's
yeah.
still got this chip on her shoulder. Like, she's just so like insecure still, and like mean to everybody in the cast about it. And every time she just went on about anything, it just, like, the way that she is so stupid about that guy that's clearly scamming her for her family's money, that she met in yoga and then let come live with her after only knowing him for a month. Like, she just keeps doing these really dumb things, and everything she said was just eye roll inducing for me.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm going to agree with you on pretty much all of it. How the only thing I'm going to say differently is, out of all the girls, I thought she was the most interesting because I think she had the most
That's
to
fair.
do, and I think had the most at least interesting story. Like her story at least went somewhere. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, she was the fat kid that she grew up to be hot, but I mean, I can speak from experience. Like, that shit sticks with you. So like
Yeah.
that's not that much of a stretch. So I do think like she is by far the most, and I wrote down she's the most relatable and most interesting one, which is again odd because she's not our final girl. But
Yeah.
I didn't
She
mind
might
her
be the
that bad.
most
Like
fleshed out character.
yeah, she is. That's why. Yeah, yeah. That's the pretty much. Thank you. I'm so long winded. I could have just summed it up with most fleshed out. But but
I liked your explanation too, but yeah.
yeah, but I liked her the most of pretty much anybody. Um, and yeah, she was a stupid bitch, of course. I mean, but again,
Yeah.
she's hanging on hanging on to her past with the fat girl syndrome. And again, that's totally relatable. I understand that. And Daniel Cosgrove, who played her boy toy, what was his name? Campbell Morris or whatever.
Campbell
Um,
something, yeah.
yeah, so like it's understandable. Like dude is good looking. She even god damn it. So even though she's hot now, she still thinks of herself as what she used to be. So she's got like
Right.
this hot guy that's interested in her. It makes sense that she kind of gets overly attached and kind of psychotic about it. It makes sense. I like that part. Um,
I
so
think
yeah,
that's
I
what I think
he's my
that
favorite
that's
character.
what's interesting to me is, like, I think that's where the this movie kind of dates itself a little bit, because that guy Daniel Cosgrove, his character Campbell is like supposedly supposed to be like hot and like hot enough to make her feel like, oh, like I need to like have him like me because it'll validate me. But like he's got this awful late 90s like middle part in the bangs. He's got like one of those fucking ugly like shiny leather, like unfitted leather jackets, like that, like long with like the jeans, and he just looks like a hot mess, and he just looks so skeezy. Like it just was so obvious to me from the get-go that he sucked. And so I guess in 2001 he looked probably a little bit more normal, because I feel like a lot of people dressed like that. But to me, I was like, girl, Dorothy, what are you doing?
Dorothy girl, what is your problem? No, you're absolutely right about him. It's funny because it was during that era. It was I call it the hair product era because like
Yeah.
all the dudes had the product in their hair and they all do you ever watch Home Improvement?
Yeah.
All right, well, do you remember Zachary Ty Bryan who he always had the like that hair product greasy like part down the middle with like the swoops that came down?
Yes,
Like
yes, I do.
pretty much
Oh my
every
gosh, I'm looking up a picture
yeah,
now.
everybody had that fucking hairstyle in these goddamn
Yeah.
movies. But yeah, Daniel
It's the
like
Dawson hair.
yeah, exactly. Um yeah, so we're pretty much on to him now. But the only thing I even remember that fucking dude from was 90210 because yes, come on, I watched that. It was of my era. So I remember him on 90210 and I don't really know him from much else. So again, I think they were probably
Yeah, he didn't do much
piggybacking
else.
off of that. Yeah. I don't really have much to say about him. Um, he pissed me off, but not like him specifically. Like he was one of those red herrings that pissed me off because they set that fucking shit up right out the bat, and they're like, "All right, here is like your number two, possibly number one pick of who the killer
Mhm.
is," and they built it up. They built it up, and they fucking kill him off. Like there's a good 20 minutes or so left of the fucking movie, and as soon as he gets killed, you automatically know, welp, it's obviously got to be David Boreanaz, and because that's the only other red herring we technically got left, and that just fucking irked the
Yeah.
shit out of me because they could have took the ball and ran with it so much longer, but they didn't.
Yeah, that's why I feel like there was just too many ideas happening at once, because never ever at any point in the movie do they even remotely hint that Dorothy could be the killer. So when
Right.
when you see the killer in the costume and the mask like come like attacking Kate and like coming down the stairs at her, and then it gets shot and they pull off the mask and it's Dorothy, like it's legitimately surprising. what I think is interesting about that, though, is that even they didn't need to, if they had just done that, if that was the true ending and Dorothy was the killer, and they hadn't give any like hints that it could be her, that to me could be interesting, because as soon as the mask came off and it was Dorothy, I immediately thought, oh, okay, that actually makes sense, because she was like really mad at all of them and she like resents all of them. So I kind
Right.
of liked that. But then when they kind of flip flop and say, actually, just kidding, it wasn't her, and then they have all these other like dead end red herrings that just come and go, including Daniel Cosgrove, like you just mentioned, it again just cheapens it for me. And yeah, I thought the Daniel Cosgrove red herring was the dumbest one, because I didn't think, I was like, there's no way, like he's clearly not the killer, so why are we even dedicating any screen time to thinking that he might be?
Yeah, this movie should have just been called J.K. because that's all it was. J.K. All right, so look, I've got a lot to say, but I'm going to save this because it goes along with the ending that I want to talk more in depth about. So I'm gonna hold my tongue on that, and let's jump over. I technically we got about two more people we can talk about. Jessica
Yeah.
Caulfield, who played Lily, who of course is famous for the Legally Blonde movies, White Chicks, and she's also in Urban Legends Final Cut, which spoilers we'll be talking about very soon in the near future. Um,
Yay.
what'd you think about her character of Lily? Like she's not in the movie much, but what'd you think about Lily?
Okay, so I love Jessica Caulfield. I love everything I've seen her in. She's so funny, and I feel like even though she doesn't have a ton of screen time in this movie, for me personally, she is like, if they'd given her a bit more screen time, I would have put her on par with Paige, Denise Richards' character, as far as like being the most interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Like, she's just really funny, and she's also really like sassy, but in a different way than Denise Richards. And she just, all of her line deliveries are super funny, and I just really believed her. Like, I felt like she was one of the only characters that I was like, I feel like I knew this girl in college. I feel like I went to school with somebody like this, and that I could attach that to like memories of people that I know in my real life. So that I thought was interesting. What I really like about Jessica Caulfield, just as an actor, is how dedicated she was to this role. She insisted on doing all of her own stunts. So her death scene, that was actually her getting shot with the fake arrows, and the arrows were knocking the wind out of her. Like, she legitimately like she, in an interview, was saying that the director Jamie Blanks was saying like, oh, that was so great, like you did that so well, and she's like, that was not acting, like that legitimately knocked the breath out of me. And she got her back bruised, hanging over the railing, and that right before she falls over into the trash can. So I just appreciated her dedication to the role. And yeah, I wish she had more to do. She kind of seemed like mostly just the comic relief out of the friend group, which is good, but I think she probably could have been in the movie a bit longer.
Yeah, I agree on all fronts. I really like her a lot. She's cute and she's always like the bubbly, fun person in the movie. Again, like to me, she was kind of like just kind of bland and kind of fitted in with everybody, but she was the most fun, and like she is in most of the movies. But I do think, like you said, aside from Denise Richards, she was the most watchable, and this movie could have
Hmm.
benefited from more of her. But with that being said, I do think she also had like some of the coolest death scene. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's that. But not really much else we can expand on because like she's kind of just a blink and you miss it character. She's barely in it. Um, so that will kind of trickle down to Fulvio Cerci, who played the detective, the skeezy detective, who again, god damn it. So like you introduce this fucking detective who you think's going to be like a fucking hero, Dr. Loomis dude, only to like
Oh
10 minutes
yeah.
later we turn him into this like sleazoid guy who's trying to fuck Denise Richards, and then a little bit later, like he calls Kate, which is Marley Shelton's character, like warning her that the killer could possibly be on the way, and that I'm on my way, like basically like on my way to like save the day, and we never fucking see him again.
No, just his severed head floating in a pool. It's the most anticlimactic death because you don't even see his death. It's totally off screen. So
Yeah,
it's just we don't they that character frustrates the hell out of me too because first of all, he's the
me too.
worst detective ever. He is the most useless cop ever in a movie. He shows up, he already like doesn't take this seriously. Like they're telling him all this shit about Jeremy Melton and I feel like he even says there's like a line where he's like, "I wouldn't worry about it too much." It's like, "Oh, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I just got sent like maggots and our friend
Right.
is fucking dead." But yeah, it just feels like the whole time he doesn't really get anywhere. The most useful thing he does is he's the one that reveals the backstory that Jeremy Melton, after the incident at the Valentine's Day dance, he goes to juvie and then eventually ends up in a psych ward. And so that
Right.
he's just kind of a means to an end as far as like moving the plot along and letting us know what's going on. But
Plot
again,
device. Yep.
worst cop ever. Like not only does he not really save the day at all, but he also just takes the time out of his busy schedule to try and creepily hit on Denise Richards alone in his office. So I he sucked and he deserved a more interesting death, I'll say at least, because it just was really anticlimactic to just hear him be like, "I'm on my way," and then 10 minutes later Kate just finds his head floating in like a koi fish pond.
Yeah. Total bullshit ending to that character. Which is weird because this guy is he's a day player. He's on like fucking 50 million TV shows, and the dude
Oh
99%
yeah.
of the time plays a cop. So this dude knows how to play a
Yeah.
cop for sure.
Yeah.
But this was the worst fucking detective of probably screen history. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's not much more to say about it other than fucking useless fucking this. You know what? This fucking script, man, terrible.
Oh, just
All right.
wait till we get into it.
Okay. So now we're getting to the meat and bones where I want to be in our show. I want to do the cherry on top with the cast. You ready? Let's wrap the cast up with Katherine Heigl. Okay. Katherine Heigl who played Shelley. So, dude, I'm gonna start this one off because I just want to start it off. Look, I I forgot that I used to love Katherine Heigl because there was this movie by the Disney Channel that had her and Danielle Harris from Halloween
Push
4 and
upon a
5 in it called
star.
Yes, that movie where they switch
I
places.
fucking
Um,
love that movie. Yeah.
I loved that movie too, and like I fell in love with Katherine Heigl in that movie. I thought she was so fucking adorable. And so like I watched Roswell, the original Roswell, and I loved her on that. And of course, throughout the years, she famously has become like this bitch of an actress who nobody wants to work with anymore. And she kind of got that stigma about her. And when you get that stigma about you, and like for a fact that somebody is like that in real life, you kind of lose uh, interest in them.
Yeah.
So like now when I see her, like I'm just like immediately like that bitch. My girlfriend was just watching some brand new made for Netflix movie that she's in, and as soon as I saw her, I was like, turn my nose up, and I was like, that fucking bitch. And it wasn't until today when I watched Valentine. It wasn't until today when I watched Valentine again for like I said, the fourth or fifth time. When she shows up, and my heart kind of immediately skipped a beat, and my old memories start to flood in back when I used to love Katherine Heigl, because God, she's hot, dude. Well, she was hot. Or I mean, she probably still is, but she's got that bitch stigma. But like, nah, man, 2001 Katherine Heigl, like hotness, cuteness. Like, I loved her, and I loved that entire opening. The best thing about this movie is the fucking opening. The first
Oh
ten
yeah.
minutes of this movie is it's a banger, dude. Um, and I like how Katherine Heigl was to Valentine that Drew Barrymore was to Scream. Like she was definitely that actress that everybody was on everybody's radar at the time. Everybody started to like like, and everybody, you put her in a horror movie, oh, she's probably going to be the main one. Nope, bitch is dead in the first 10 minutes. Um, but her setup was really good. Like I said, that entire opening is really good. She's a coroner working on that body. Like all the jump scare shit is, I felt, handled really well. And then, like you said, when the killer chasing her down the corridor of the morgue, fucking well lit, super well shot. Loved all about that. I loved her in the role, even though like it was a fucking short role. I loved it. If this movie had been the whole time what the first 10 minutes was, this movie would have been fucking fantastic.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely one of the strongest sequences in the whole movie, especially when she goes and hides in the body bag. Like that's so, I don't know, that's just so
It's
icky and
tense.
like creepy and weird and I love it. I I something about Katherine Heigl has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So it is kind of validating to hear that she's got a reputation of being kind of difficult to work with. But whether that's true or not, maybe she is really nice to some people. I don't know her, but the thing regarding this movie that really irked me about her is that in the role itself she's really good. Like she's super cute, she's believable. That whole sequence, like where she's running away and is terrified, like I believe her and I felt for her. I felt like bad for her that she had to die the way she died. But a few years after this movie came out, she said in an interview that she actually didn't even read the whole script for this movie when she accepted the role. She only read the scenes that she was supposed to be a part of, which I understand. A working actor, they're probably reading a lot of scripts, and sometimes, especially if it's just a bit part, you might just read the one part you're in. But what kind of annoys me about that is that she went on to say that once she saw the movie in full, she regretted being a part of the film and like wasn't happy with the movie. And so that just kind of annoyed me about her, and
Yeah.
it just kind of, I don't know, left a bad taste in my mouth, you know.
Well, you know what? You know what I gotta say about that? The, she went from being in like all these big ass movies and stuff to next thing you know, she was in fucking ZQL commercials without any fucking lines, where it
Yeah.
was just her laying down in bed and falling asleep.
Yeah.
And she's just now starting to get back and getting jobs again and doing big stuff. But bitch, don't you forget, you were in a
Don't
fucking
forget your
ZQL
horror
commercial.
roots. She was in Bride of
Well,
Chucky
yeah,
also.
yeah. So like that's I think it's funny because you talk shit about Valentine only to like what 15 years later you've resorted to being in ZQL commercials because you can't get a fucking job. Girl, you look good in this movie. I liked you in this movie, but you a bitch. But all right. Let's hop on over. Let's shoot on over like an arrow from Cupid to the writer and director and producers of this movie. Let's just start from the top with Jamie Blanks, the director of the movie.
Yeah, so this was only his second big movie. He's from Australia. He had a short film in the
Okay.
90s that got some traction. And then I believe Urban Legend was his first like breakout movie. So he's kind of
Yeah, because I think it
riding
was in
off of the
'98.
coattails of, yeah. Yeah, so, he's riding off the coattails of that, and, then he got given this movie. I couldn't find a whole lot of info as to, like, how exactly that came about. It sounds like, I did hear something that he had been actually sent scripts for movies like Scream and, I Know What You Did Last Summer, but the studios passed on him in favor of bigger names for directors. So that's just kind of an interesting tidbit. But other than that, I don't really know a whole lot about him. He seems I watched a couple of interviews with him. He seems pretty nice. Like, and he looks back on this movie fondly. Like I was just watching literally just a couple of days ago at the time of us recording this. He and some other people from the crew did this live stream thing where like they watched the movie and gave like a live commentary along with it. So he's still very proud of where he came from and still sees this movie holds this movie in high regard. So for that I appreciate him.
Awesome. Well, like I was saying earlier, like I my hats are off to him because as much as we have thus far, we've just spent like an hour and some odd minutes, like kind of shitting on this movie. I want to just say that, like, I don't think he did a bad job. I think the movie, like,
No.
I think, I think he did a great job. Again, the first Urban Legends movie is like my favorite of this era of slasher films. I like it more than the I Know What You Last Summer movies. I like it, of course, more than this movie. I like it way more than any of the Scream sequels. And again, this one, it kind of felt like a cut and paste job of Urban Legend, as far as directing and style and stuff goes. But I mean, fuck, dude, you're basically doing the exact same thing, so you're going to get that. But I think it's actually a shame that he hasn't done more. I think he could have had a decent career, at least in this genre. I can't say for anything technically else. Um, but the only thing other than Urban Legend and of course this movie that I know that he's done, he was the editor of my. It's kind of a recent documentary, but it's one of my favorite documentaries, which was Electric Boogaloo, which is a documentary on Canon Films, which is Canon Films is one of my favorite '80s and '90s studios and shit. So other than that, he was the editor of that. I don't know a fucking thing else
He
about
works
Jamie Blank.
mostly as a composer now. He works mostly all of his recent credits from like the past 10 years, it's as a composer, and it's a lot of short films too. So I mean, he's working regularly, but I guess for whatever reason he just hasn't gotten behind the camera anymore.
Oh,
And I
well, that's a
think,
shame.
like you said, this movie is really well directed. Like I really like the like visually everything this movie does, and like the way stylistically I'm into. But I think it really the script is what really brought this movie down a few pegs, and so I'd love to get into some of the stuff about how this script came into existence.
All right. Well, look, we neither one of us has got really much else we can say about the director. We think he did a great job. Um, I liked what he did with the only other things that I know him from, which is Urban Legend. So fuck yeah, I don't know anything about the screen. The only thing I know is this was based on a book by Tom Savage. I don't even know who the fuck Tom Savage is. I don't know anything about the screenwriters. So finally, Katie, unleash. Tell me and everyone listening, um, what you know about this atrocity of a script.
Right. Okay. So based on a novel by Tom Savage, as you said, but it's only the title. Like literally, this has nothing to do with the book at all. Uh,
Hold up.
what I heard read it, yeah, nothing to do with it at all. It sounds like a producer just really wanted to use the name Valentine, and I guess just preemptively bought the rights to this novel so that nobody could come and try to say that they were copying them in any way. And so somehow that ends up like when you look it up on IMDb, it credits Tom Savage as like based on the novel by Tom Savage. But the book Valentine by Tom Savage is just it's about a woman who is a novelist, and she just has a stalker who wants to kill her, and he leaves her creepy notes and messages on her answering machine, and he goes by the name Valentine, and that's it. So
Wow. It sounds more like when a stranger calls or something like that.
yeah, so the book really had nothing to do with it. And then so what I do know, this is where things get a little fuzzy, and this is where we start to see some issues that I don't think we've actually had to cover on this show, because most of the movies that we've covered have been like indie or lower budget, or if they were bigger movies, they were back in the day when just things weren't as messy in Hollywood as they have become in the past couple of decades. So it's really customary now in Hollywood and all throughout the 90s and 2000s for somebody to write a script and then a studio to take that script from the writers and give it to a different set of writers and say, do this but different. so
Right.
so there was a script for a movie about a killer who was getting revenge on people who had humiliated him. In this case, it was in college. It was a college prank. It was really similar. I actually haven't seen Terror Train, but it was pretty your description of Terror Train was pretty spot on to what this original script was going for. That script was written by Donna Powers and Wayne Powers. And then for various reasons that I've not been able to find online. For some reason, it was handed to Gretchen Berg and Aaron Harberts. And they just kind of took it, and their job was to basically make this marketable. So they took this kind of like basic slasher, like in the original script, the killer had like a pig mask, and they just felt like that wouldn't work for whatever reason. So they needed a hook. So they decided to go with this Valentine's Day theme and to go with this like Cupid cherub imagery instead. So in that respect, I think that was a smart move. Like it definitely solidified it in pop culture. It's associated with a holiday. Like there aren't, other than like My Bloody Valentine and maybe a handful of other, there aren't that many like Valentine's Day horror movies. So I think it was smart
Right.
for them to do that at least. But the big thing that I want to talk about is that when they were writing the script, the entire time they were developing this movie, right up until they started production, Dorothy was meant to be the killer. Everything was written so that Dorothy would be revealed to be the killer, and and it would make sense. So what happened was that once David Boreanaz was cast, a tabloid got a hold of that info, and they printed a story, posted as if we're in the internet age. They printed a story where they were saying, "Oh, Buffy's David Boreanaz has been cast as the killer in an upcoming slasher," and they may have even named the slasher by name. So I'm not really sure what led them to just roll with it at that point, but it seems like once this was already out in the wild, and since a lot of this movie was like a whodunit, for some reason they decided to just completely change it at the last minute and shoehorn David Boreanaz in as the killer. So that's why it makes no fucking sense, and that's why it feels like the last 5 minutes of the movie are just tacked on at the end, because it really, like, Dorothy was set up the whole time to be revealed as the killer.
That is some dumb shit.
Yeah. It's really stupid. And so, that's kind of one of my biggest complaints about the movie. Other than how it was written, it had this movie had a $10 million budget. That has to be like the biggest budget of
Jesus.
any movie we've talked about so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was a $10 million budget shot, and it took them 42 days to shoot it. But keep in mind, David Boreanaz was only there for 10 days out of those 42 days. So they had to figure out a way to like make him work with all of the other plot devices that they had set up that was initially going towards Dorothy being the killer, and then they just shit the bed there at the last minute.
Oh,
Um
they shit the bed.
they did. I think another thing that I really feel like was to this movie's detriment was the time that it came out, which you briefly touched on earlier. Just this era of people, trying to cut down on the violence. But I have a little bit more tidbits about that. So all of the kills in the movie were a lot gorier. They were a
Oh, I
lot
figured.
longer. They were a lot gnarlier. The director says in interviews, "I was hired to make an R-rated movie, and I delivered that." And
Nice.
even the MPAA actually approved it. Like they gave it the R rating. He wasn't in danger of getting an NC-17. Like it was ready to go. But the studio decided to force him to cut down some of those kills because there was just ongoing backlash like that Hollywood was receiving because of Columbine. Columbine was only like a couple of years before this came out, and they were trying to blame the media on school
Yeah.
shootings and on violence, and they just thought having like this movie almost didn't come out because the whole idea of like a person getting revenge on former classmates around this time after Columbine was just too messy. And then kind of like to doubly fuck them over in this case, The Matrix had also just come out, and a lot of the characters in the Matrix are wearing these big black trench coats and like overcoats, cloaks, kind of similar to what the Cupid killer is wearing. And there was this guy that killed his whole fucking family because he was obsessed with the Matrix and obsessed with trench coats, and this all happened like right around the same time. So the studios were just really sensitive about that. So some of these kills got cut down, which is why they're a little bit more lackluster than what I think they could be. Apparently on
Hmm.
the Blu-ray, they have put the deleted scenes, or the extended scenes are on there as an extra, and there's a ton of like behind the scenes footage and stuff on the Blu-ray, but I didn't get my hands on that, so I just rented it. But the fans have been asking for a gore cut of this movie, and I would be interested to
It would
see.
help.
I honestly don't think it would help it that much, but it would be interesting to see.
Well, I mean, just from a personal aspect, it would help for me. Just because, like I said, I really like the kills. I don't think they're like super inventive, but I think they're like I like how they're done. They're well done. But every time it would happen, I just
Yeah.
knew that there was more to it. And it would just, I would just like it. I would just like to when you know there's more there, you just kind of got to see it.
Yeah. So I mean, all of those, I just talked about some negative things. The one thing that I will say is that based on a couple of interviews that I listened to, it sounds like everybody had a really great time making this. Like seems like everybody got along, all the cast got along, the crew got along, and they just had a really fun time making this goofy Valentine's Day themed horror movie. So at the end of the day, at least there's that.
Yeah. You know, one thing I wanted to bring up since you keep saying this Valentine's theme movie, and of course you said there's not many out there, other than like My Bloody Valentine or whatever. And it occurred to me today when I watched it that it never really stuck out to me before. But again, when you're fucking doing a show based on it, you're going to be paying more attention to stuff than normal. I found today that I never realized how little this movie actually has to do with Valentine's Day. Like,
Yeah.
nothing about this movie really feels like a Valentine's Day movie. I know it's supposed to be like a Valentine's party at the end when, everything happens in the third act, but it doesn't feel any different from any other fucking party that happens in any of these other, teeny bopper horror movies. So other than that and the school dance at the opening credits, there's nothing about this movie that seems like Valentine's Day.
Yeah, like they start. This is another thing that I wish they would have stuck with, but they kind of like ignored it about after the halfway mark. But I thought it was cool how he was sending them these like Riddler esque Valentine's Day, like creepy, threatening Valentine's Day cards. I thought that was
Mhm.
interesting, and they'd say things like roses are red, violets are blue. They'll need dental records to identify you. Like that's so
That was a good
that
one.
one's good.
That was
That
good.
one's really good.
I did like
So I wish they would have somehow utilized that more. It felt like they just ignored it. But you mentioned the Valentine's Day party, and while I totally agree, they don't really focus on the whole Valentine's Day theme of in this movie a whole lot. It feels a little shoehorned in. But the Valentine's Day party was an honorable mention on my list of horror movie tropes from this era, because I feel like there was always just this like unnecessarily extravagant, over the top themed party for like a holiday
yes.
that no one gives a shit about.
Yes, absolutely. Every one of these motherfuckers has one of these parties in
Yeah.
it. All right. Look, let's uh let's just get right down to it. We're nearing the end here. We're getting to where I want to be. So look, let's go ahead and get back into the let's do our fucking full circle, get back into this fucking ending.
Yes.
First of all, so again, this movie starts up with our main characters in middle school, Valentine's dance. This little dorky kid, Jeremy Melton, keeps going to these girls, asking them to dance, and they keep all turning him down in like ferocious ways, except for the character of Kate. And he asks the chunky girl Dorothy to dance. She agrees. Next thing you know, they're fucking making out under the bleachers. Uh, the bully kids catch him, and in order to save face, she claims that he forced himself on her and attacked her. And they pick on him and they beat him up and shit. And that's the kickstart of our movie. So we automatically know that what's going to happen is because of the repercussions of what these girls have done to him, more specifically Dorothy. And we established that For whatever reason, this kid's got a fucking nosebleed problem. Um, and at the fucking drop of a hat, his fucking nose starts bleeding. So when we jump into quote unquote present day, and everybody's grown up now and everything, and we are introduced to the killer, who is wearing the cherub mask. Every time he makes a kill, we see the blood trickled out of the nose of the mask. And Jesus Christ, how is this fucking person not dead by the end of this movie? Because I have never seen somebody's nose bleed so goddamn much. It was every fucking kill. That fucking blood just gushing out this fucking nose. But then I'm wrapping it all up so we can dive into it and dissect it. But then at the end, we think it's David Boreanaz is the killer. So it's a little cat and mouse set. Well, a very shitty cat and mouse chase between David Boreanaz chasing Marley Shelton around the house, and you think David Boreanaz is the killer, and then next thing you know, the killer pops out. David Boreanaz opens fire, shoots the motherfucker like 4 or 5 times, and they take the mask off, and we are now shown that it's Dorothy, the ex-fat kid. And the very last shot of the movie is David Boreanaz comforting Marley Shelton, and then blood trickles on her cheek, and the camera pans up, and he's got fucking blood coming down his nose, and we end on that fucking note that evidently he was the killer. But here's the thing, and I'm starting to shake because like I am so goddamn aggravated. I have been aggravated all fucking day,
You've been
Katie.
away.
It's been a while since I watched this movie, and I forgot how much it just pisses me the fuck off. Who the fuck is the killer? Because here's the thing. All right, here's the thing. We keep doing the fucking nosebleed shit. All right, we see the nosebleed every time the quote unquote killer off somebody. All right, but then at the end, we take the mask off and it's Dorothy. Well, we know Dorothy didn't have a fucking nosebleed problem, right?
Yeah.
But then we're shown the blood trickle down David Boreanaz. Okay, cool. Then he's obviously this fucking Jeremy Melton kid grown up who has miraculously changed his goddamn face. All right, fine, whatever. Why the fuck was Dorothy wearing the killer's costume?
Okay, so I think the theory there, what they this is what I think they were trying to do. I believe they were trying to say that because isn't there a brief scene where Dorothy is attacked by the killer and then it cuts away? It's something they imply that she's like she goes up to her room after she says like she and Kate kind of get into a little bit of an argument and then she goes upstairs to her room. And if I recall correctly, it's been a few days since I've seen this. I think there is a brief moment where it's implied that like oh yeah she got like she's next and then they yada 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 and do a bunch of other shit and like we kind of forget that that happened. But I think the idea is that if we're going with David Boreanaz as the killer, he attacked her, knocked her out, put her in the costume. And then at the end, when Kate is attacked by the Cupid killer, who we think is the killer, it's actually just Dorothy who is waking up from being knocked out and is really confused and scared. But for some reason, she doesn't scream, she doesn't say anything. Like, I thought it was going to kind of be like how in V for Vendetta when all the people have the V for Vendetta mask on and they don't know who is who and then they take off the mask and everybody's got their mouth taped shut and they couldn't ask for help. And that I think they do something like that in one of the Batman movies also. Like I thought it was going to kind of be like that. So because they didn't do
Hold up. You know what it's exactly like? I mean, 100% fucking exactly
what
like another movie from the exact same fucking time and era that gave the most fucking bullshit excuse I have ever heard, and it's so on par with being so ridiculously goddamn stupid that I can't believe other people, along with myself, even accepted this bullshit. And what I'm talking about is fucking the excuse that they give in Halloween Resurrection of why Michael Myers wasn't really him that got his head chopped off. It was a paramedic, and Michael Myers crushed his larynx and put him in the costume. So when Jamie Lee Curtis went to chop his head off, that's why he didn't say anything. I mean, I guess he forgot how to take a fucking mask off too. But no, it's because his larynx was crushed and he couldn't fucking
yeah.
talk. So maybe David Boreanaz just crushed Dorothy's larynx, right? Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Fucking stupid.
It's really dumb. It's really dumb and it's really sloppily handled, and it also really irritates me because I do like this movie, but I want to like it way more. Like, cuz I can see like all the potentials there. Clearly Jamie Blanks is a good director and he knows how to do horror. Urban Legend is fucking awesome. Like, and he and Urban Legend is also a whodunit. You spend the whole movie being like, who is it? Who is doing this? And so that's what's frustrating, is that how muddled this whole thing got. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But what I think they were trying to shoehorn in is that she somehow was just disoriented and didn't say anything, and then gets shot by David Boreanaz and just dies.
Whatever.
But yeah, it's also
Whatever.
because like because he you really brought up something that I had not even considered, so I'm really glad you brought it up. Like, the fact that every single time he kills someone, he gets a nosebleed, but then he doesn't get a nosebleed at the very end until he's sitting with Marley Shelton like several minutes later, and he's kind of like giving this whole speech about people in pain. Well, like sometimes it just sticks with you for so long that you have to do something about it, and then he gets the nosebleed, and it's like that just doesn't make sense. So like the logic, and I don't like to be too nitpicky about like logic in movies, but this was just a glaring error to me. Like, it doesn't make any sense why Marley Shelton has never noticed that he gets nosebleeds on the regular. Or if Dorothy was supposed to be the killer, why she never gets nosebleeds on the regular.
Right. Yeah, because obviously David Boreanaz's character, Adam is his character's name. Uh, Obviously, Adam and Kate have been together for a long time now, and that's something else that didn't fucking make sense to me. Is they established very early on that they have been an on again, off again relationship for a while, and they, of course, talk about the whole alcoholic bullshit. So come on, we are established that these guys are close enough of a relationship that this has been going on for a while. So obviously, this motherfucker has never had nosebleeds before, and obviously not around her. And it's so muddy, and none of it makes fucking sense. And it's so weird, dude.
Yeah.
I was actually on board if they had just totally cut out the nosebleed bullshit. If they had just left that alone and not done that, and kept Dorothy as the killer, I'm fine. I would have dug it. I would have been there for it. But then like they just fucking screwed the pooch hard on that ending.
Yeah, I aesthetically, I really like the nosebleed through the Cupid mask, but once you unmask the villain and it's revealed to be a character that you've been with this entire movie who doesn't get nosebleeds, then it just is kind of silly. Like, it would have been an interesting red herring if they just had a friend in their friend group who just, because some people just get fucking nosebleeds all the time, and it just
Right.
happens. And that would have been kind of interesting if one of their friend groups like just got nosebleeds all the time. And but I guess that is also the thing, is that like none of the main characters had seen this nosebleed happen, so only
Right.
the audience knew. But still, that so that's why it's also frustrating, because it's just like, I don't know, they long-winded way of just saying what we've already said, which is they totally just fucked all that up at the end, and it's just a mess, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
Look, we're close friends, so you can call me out in front of God and everybody listening if you think this is terrible. I want your honest fucking opinion. Are you ready?
Okay.
Here is the ending that I fucking concocted. Um, as soon as the credits started rolling, I was like, oh, this. I think this would have been fucking beneficial to the movie. All right, what if we keep everything exactly the same? All right, so the same setup. We've got the Melton kit at the beginning. We got all that shit going on, right?
Mhm.
And then we flash forward to present day time, just like it is. Everybody's grown up now and everything, and everybody's all fucking hot and shit. We know that Dorothy now is like a rich bitch, right?
Yeah.
And she's got like this huge sprawling mansion that she lives in, and obviously she's got some kind of daddy issues because her dad's rich and he's like running around with some like fucking
Like a girl that's like
hooker or
younger than her.
yeah, and like that was just something else that they just fucking established and then just did nothing with. So here's where I would start to change things. What if in the storyline we show that all right, all these girls were friends in middle school, and after graduation and everybody gets older or whatever, everybody kind of moves their separate ways, and maybe Dorothy moved away or something, right, with her family,
Yeah.
and um, her mother and father get killed, and, car accident, whatever, some crazy shit, and she's left all this money, and she moves back into town, and she reconnects with her friends, right?
Mhm.
So they haven't seen each other for a long time. So as soon as like Denise Richards and Marley Shelton and everybody's characters like they reunite and they see Dorothy, they're like, "Wow, you look great! You've lost so much weight. Look at you! You don't even look like the same girl anymore." And everybody and they all reconnect and they're all friends. And then it's like her coming back into town has like caused whoever the killer is to like get riled up and get pissed because all the girls are back together, right? So now they start getting picked off one by one and get the creepy Valentine, notes, and they get picked off one by one. And guess what? At the very end, guess what we find out? That Dorothy has been dead this whole time, and that the fucking Melton kid got a sex
Oh,
change, and he's fucking
shit.
Dorothy. And we're doing the whole, Felissa Rose is not here as our mangled dick expert, but I'll pull out the sleepaway camp ending. Maybe not a full sex change or whatever, but Melton is now like disguised himself as Dorothy. That's why she's lost so much weight. That's why she looks so much fucking different,
Oh,
because she is a he, and he is the one that's picking them off one by one. But like that was my idea. I thought that'd have been a great way to really keep everybody on their toes of like who's the killer. Um, and it would have made a little bit more sense of why and how and all that kind of shit.
yeah.
But that was my ideal.
Well, I mean, it definitely makes more sense than what we ended up getting. And I kind of like the sleepaway camp reveal. That is pretty cool. I think it would have been better than what we got. But when you were saying that, I couldn't help but think that it really feels like what would have been, if we're getting really nitpicky and being like, what would I have done? It would have been a much stronger narrative for Dorothy to have been the final girl because she has the ultimate arc. First of all, we already mentioned that she is the most fleshed out character, she has the most backstory, but like, what an interesting arc that like she's the one who falsely accuses Jeremy, which assume like you can pretty much blame that for setting him on the trajectory that sent him to juvie and then eventually a psych ward. It's not completely her fault. She's just a little kid, but you can't deny that that action is what set things into motion. So it would be interesting
Right.
if, all these years later she's grown up and Jeremy has come back for revenge and she's got to like kind of come to terms with like her own role in making him what he became. So either way, I think having Dorothy be a more central character throughout the movie would have made it make more sense.
Doing it that way would have paralleled Terror Train even that much more, because that's literally Jamie Lee Curtis's arc in Terror Train.
Mm-hmm.
Like she didn't. So the prank that they pull on the killer in Terror Train at the beginning, like she's in on the prank. She just didn't know that the prank was going to go as far as it did,
Right.
and she didn't know it was going to fuck with him as much as it did. But she was indeed and on it, and of course she is the final girl of the movie. So it's very very similar to that. But yeah, I'm with you either way. Like I think I feel like such a dick about going off so hard on this movie this episode, because again, like I don't hate it. It's serviceable. Of course I'll watch it again. Um but it just, I've said this before and I'll continue to say it in numerous episodes, I'm sure. So much fucking potential, dude. Like this movie, like so much potential. It could have been a great slasher. Instead, I it's a mediocre slasher at best.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. I think that's why, like, that's why we've been able to talk about this movie for 2 hours because if it was just bad and like there was just nothing good about it, no heart, nothing interesting about it at all, then we probably wouldn't even be having an episode about it. But I think the reason that like it's easy to get so riled up about the choices that are made here is because you and I can see, and a lot of other people can see the potential here. I can see how fucking cool this movie could have been, and it has one of the coolest looking like slasher villains that I've seen in a movie. And so yeah, like you just see all these things that could have been, and then you also see what happens in Hollywood when a script gets passed around between a billion different people, and then there's like $10
Yeah.
million on the line, and there's all these different like people in charge like putting their input into this thing. It kind of loses its essence, and it's like they would rather just have this shoehorned shitty plot ending so that they can get it out in time for Valentine's Day in 2001 and make a bunch of money. Like they'd rather have that than actually give them the time, because that's another thing the director mentioned, is that they were on a very tight timeline to get this out by Valentine's Day. So it was
Right.
rushed on top of all the other nonsense. And so that is just always disappointing to hear. So if anybody wants to remake Valentine, please hire us as your script writers, because we'll do it better.
Well, we think we
We think
would.
we would, maybe not, but you know, and no shade to the people that wrote this movie. I think they did their best, but I even listened to an interview with them that they were on an insane writing deadline and having to like get up at 5 a.m. to work on it together during their Christmas vacation while they were supposed to be with their families. So like this whole thing was just rushed from beginning to end.
Right. And it's weird. When you were talking about the script and how it passed around and adapted and stuff like that, reminds me so much of like the Die Hard franchise. Um, of like I think like Die Hard 3, Die Hard 4, Die Hard 5. None of those scripts were Die Hard scripts. They were original scripts by different
Oof.
people, and those scripts were purchased by the studio and handed to somebody else and said, "Here, shoehorn John McClane in." And like that's how those movies were made, and that's why they kept steadily getting worse and worse and worse, because like they totally lost the heart of that franchise. They were no longer what those movies were supposed to be. They were literally a different script and just muddled and changed. And it happens all the fucking time. You hear about scripts going through changes and like starting off as one thing and turning into another. It fucking happens, and 9 times out of 10, it's not a great result. But yeah, that's Hollywood for you. Um, but that's pretty much what I've got. Katie, give me your final thoughts on everything, and let's cap it off here.
Yeah, so ultimately, I still consider myself a fan of this movie. I think it has a lot of faults. There's a lot of things that I would want to happen differently. And I think from now on, if you know, when the next time I watch this movie, I'll probably either turn it off halfway or I'll just go get up and like do some chores with it on in the background. Because honestly, after, to me, it starts to go downhill once we get into the party sequence. Like basically,
Yeah.
like I think the peak of this whole movie is the kill where the Lily gets shot with the arrow in the middle of that really cool like video art exhibit, and like
Hmm.
Deftones is playing. It's just like that to me is just like peak 2000s horror to me, and I really like that. But the rest of this movie is a little lackluster, and you know it's not my favorite, but I wouldn't say that I hate it, and I'll definitely watch it again. But I wish that they'd had more time to flesh some of this stuff out.
Right on. Yeah, I'm on board with everything there. However, I'm a little bit different, and it's funny. Even though I full heartedly dislike this movie way more than you do, I another thing that's the opposite about me is I will of course watch it again, and I will of course watch it from beginning to end, because if anybody knows me, they know that I'm a holiday guy. So for every holiday, every year, I've always got to watch a theme horror movie, and you know, unfortunately, like you said earlier, there's not many Valentine's horror movies.
Nope.
There's My Bloody Valentine, and then there's Valentine, and that's kind of peak. So like I said, this was the fifth time of me watching it, and I'm sure next year or the year after that, I'm going to watch it again.
Same.
And I think the reason this movie has lasted and had the life that it's had is not because of it being a quote unquote like good movie. I think when you've got the cast that you've got and you've got a great looking killer, I think that is what stood the test of time, not the movie itself.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I'm not going to say no more. I'm not going to keep bashing. I would I recommend this movie? Believe it or not,
Yeah.
yes. It deserves a good watch. Um, the only thing different is when I say that I will watch this movie again. Of course, I'm just thankful that I never have to watch this movie again and sit down and fucking take notes.
Yeah, that was
And
rough.
yes, because I think that was the difference this time. Of course, this movie pissed me off before when I watched it before, but again, I'm usually like hanging out with people or having a couple drinks while I'm watching it. I'm just kind of turning my brain off. And this was the first time watching it where I had to have my brain in fucking overdrive, and I was just getting fucking pissed after every scene. So I'm glad that I don't have to do that again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend at least once.
Yeah, I would say this definitely is worth a watch. And I'll also probably watch it every Valentine's Day. Like it's still fun. Even bad horror is fun for me. But I think we're kind of ready for what normally is your favorite part of the show, but we won't have that much to talk about in this case, which is the TNA meter, of which there is none. There are a lot of really hot people in this movie, and we
Oh
do get Denise Richards in the hot tub in a bikini, but that's about it.
no, you're wrong.
Wait, really?
There's titties in the movie.
Wait, where? Where?
There's titties in the movie. Remember, if you pause the movie just
Oh
right.
my god.
So when Lily is running through the art exhibit with all like the weird like video images playing on the walls, there was numerous
Oh, right. Right,
titties.
of course. Yes.
Yep, there's numerous titties on the walls, so they count. So look, between between the random like 15 seconds worth of titties and this weird art exhibit, and I will go ahead and add in um, with Denise Richards in a bikini in a hot tub or jacuzzi or whatever, and I'll even throw in Katherine Heigl and her tank
Yeah.
top. Okay, I'll take that. I'll put it all together, wrap it up in a big bow, and I will give this movie a 1 out of 10 stars on the TNA
Hey, it's
meter.
better than 0.
Better than 0. We haven't had a 0 yet, I
No,
don't
not
think.
yet.
Uh, but yeah, there we go. All right, well, that brings us here finally to the end of the show. We just want to thank everybody for checking us out. And I just want to say, be sure to tune into our next episode because we've got a big surprise for you folks. This is technically our what I like to call our MTV slasher era month. So of course we did Valentine. So our next episode we are staying on that course and we're doing Urban Legends Final Cut. Of course, the sequel to Urban Legends. Why would we do the first one? We're going to do the
Of
second one
course.
and for obvious reasons. But we're going to do it a little bit different this time. We're going to have a special guest watching this movie with us and talking about the movie with us. And that guest is none other than Andre Gower, the leader of the Monster Squad, folks, is going to be joining us. He's going to watch Urban Legends Final Cut. We're all going to get together and we're going to talk about what we think about the movie. And it's sure to be a good show. But we want to thank our sponsor, Lunch Meat VHS. Lunch Meat VHS is your #1 destination for the appreciation, celebration, and preservation of VHS and video store culture. Check out their website at lunchmeatvhs.com and explore their store full of old school horror goodies on VHS, apparel, and much, much more. You can also follow them on Instagram at lunchmeatvhs.
Yeah, shout out to Lunch Meat, and also I am so excited for our next episode for a myriad of reasons. So definitely tune in for that when that comes out. And yeah, thanks to everybody who listened to us tonight. If you have thoughts about Valentine, or if you want to suggest a movie for us to cover, or if you just want to drop by and say hi, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Video Express Pod.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And remember, next episode, catch me, Katie, and Andre Gower as we talk about Urban Legend Final Cut. So until next time, just remember, please be kind, rewind, but most importantly, just be kind. I'm Matt.
And I'm Katie.
And we'll catch you on the next episode of Video Express.
Bye bye.